Welcome to Chamber Talk, brought to you by North Orange County Chamber, where we explore the stories and insights of leaders, business owners and CEOs from various sectors who are making a difference in our community and region. Whether you're tuning in via podcast or joining us via video, we're glad to have you here. I'm your host, Andrew Gregson, and today we have the privilege of welcoming Tim Shaw, Government Affairs Director and for Pacific West Association of Realtors and candidate for Orange County's 4th District Supervisor. Thanks for coming on today, Tim.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to go straight into asking you a few questions regarding yourself and your background a little bit, because some of our audience might not quite know who you are. Some will, but some won't. So do you mind sort of introducing yourself a little bit, share a little bit about your background and your experience that's got you to where you are today?
Let's see. I'm the oldest of 5 children. Grew up about 10 minutes away from where I live right now. So didn't make it too far, but my father, he worked for the Orange County Healthcare Agency. He was a drug and alcohol abuse counselor. So that's the home I grew up in. Tim Shaw Sr., my dad, I'm Tim Shaw Jr. So Tim Shaw Sr., my father was an employee of the county, so it's always meant a lot to me. But for me growing up, very involved in sports. I played a lot of soccer, very involved in my church, and as well at the time, Boy Scouts. So I got my Eagle Scout award just about the time I was starting at La Habra High School. So that was very formative for me growing up in the Scouts. But if anyone asks me about my life, my background, a very significant thing in my life, right after high school, I went for 2 years to serve as a missionary for my church. And the church assigned me to be a Spanish-speaking missionary in this Spanish-speaking country called Chicago, Illinois, where I was there on the south side of Chicago for 2 years, inviting people to join our church and come to our service. So spent a lot of time studying Spanish and really trying to do that, and had a very wide range of experiences there and living in the south side of Chicago there. But when I came home, I had ideas of being a pilot. So I wanted to be a professional pilot, and ended up majoring in college in aviation. So I got an associate's degree from Mount SAC up the hill in aviation, and then a bachelor's degree in aviation management. And I was taking flying lessons, got my private pilot, got my instrument rating, and had a lot of fun terrorizing the skies of Southern California in my Cessna, flying around. But decided that I wouldn't actually be a professional pilot, and went back to graduate school. Moved back to Washington, D.C., and got a master's degree from the George Washington University Graduate School of Political Management. That was a lot of fun, living right in the middle of Washington, D.C., and studying government. And really enjoyed that experience, but came home and right place, right time. I got a job teaching American government part-time over at Rio Hondo College over in Whittier. And, it was funny at the time. I thought, oh, maybe I'll do that for a year or two. And now it's been 20 years.
Wow, that's a long time. Hard
to believe, but really enjoyed being a teacher of American government to young people and having that experience. But on my, kind of job side of things, I ended up as a intern for one summer with Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. That kind of cut my teeth in the political world, so to speak, and ended up having a full-time job with Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Worked for Governor Schwarzenegger in his downtown LA office. Back then, the governor would have offices up and down the state of California. I believe they've kind of closed them all, but the satellite offices. But I worked for the governor in his downtown LA office. From there, went to work for Orange County Supervisor Janet Wynn. So I've actually worked full-time for the county government there. We used to call it the 5th floor, is where the Board of Supervisors had their offices. They've kind of redone that whole area there in the last few years. But after I worked for Supervisor Wynn, I went to work for Assemblyman Bob Huff, who very quickly got elected to the state Senate, became Senator Bob Huff. So I was his district director for about 8 years. He was really my mentor. He still remains a very dear friend, and confidant and advisor. And so I love Senator Huff and his wife, May have just been great mentors to me. Then went over to work for the Realtor Association almost 9 years ago now. It's been about 9 years. So that was kind of what I did on that end. But one day I was driving to work and I get a phone call telling me that La Habra City Councilman Steve Anderson had passed away the night before. Very unexpected, very suddenly, very shockingly. And long story short, I ended up becoming the new city council member when to replace Steve since he had passed away. So I got elected to the La Habra City Council in 2008, and I've held elected office ever since. I'm about to complete 17 years in elected office, which seems amazing. It's been that long, but I was mayor of La Habra in 2012 and again in 2018, and ended up being on the La Habra City Council for a little over a decade, and got pretty involved in regional government stuff. You know, I spent 4 years on the Orange County Sanitation District Board of Directors. That was a lot of fun. It's a great operation there. They're turning the wastewater, into drinking water stuff. And also spent about a decade on the Orange County Transportation Authority Board, the OCTA board. I really enjoyed that as well. I was chairman of OCTA for 1 year back in 2019, and a lot of fun stuff going on there. But when County Supervisor Sean Nelson was going to term out of office in 2018, I was the mayor of La Habra at the time, and I went ahead. I actually ran for supervisor then. So this will be my second time running, if you didn't know. So Sean endorsed me as his replacement, which meant a lot, and all that. There were 6 of us that ended up running that year. I actually came in first in the primary. The mayor of Fullerton at the time was Doug Chafee. He came in second. And so the way that works, if nobody gets over 50% of the vote, then the top 2 from the primary run off in November. So Doug and I ran off again in November of 2018. And do you know, I got 49.6% of the vote. Missed it by that much, less than 1% of the vote.
That's close.
And in fact, I was in the lead in that election for 9 days after the voting. They kind of, people who watch politics, can see that they count ballots for weeks after the election. So for 9 days, I was, if you went online, I was in the lead.
Wow.
And then they update the number at 5 p.m. every day. And every day he kind of cut into my lead. And after 9 days, he finally passed me up. So it felt very disappointing, of course, at the time, and just to lose by so little and all that. But as it turned out, I'd gotten my name out in Fullerton, Buena Park, La Habra, Placentia, West Anaheim, all that area. I got approached to run for the Orange County Board of Education. It was not on my radar of something I would want to do or think about doing, but they kind of talked me into it. So I went ahead and ran for that in 2020 and won. So I've ended up being on the ballot in 2018 for County Supervisor, 2020, 2022, and 2024 for the Board of Education. So the voters here of North Orange County have seen my smiling face a lot in the last few years. So anyway, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring one more time here for County Supervisor. So
one thing that stuck out in my mind there, which I would like to maybe just mention in case somebody's thinking something different. When you were mentioning about you worked for Orange County Supervisor Janet Wynn, that was the current Orange Supervisor the first time not only a couple of weeks ago. Right?
Janet was on the Board of Supervisors, then went off to the state legislature for a while. Yeah. And then just came back. So Todd Spitzer did that too. He was a supervisor, state legislature, back to supervisor. So yes, I was a staffer for Janet Wynn the first time.
I want to make that clear because that's some years ago. I want people to think it was only yesterday. That's good. That's good. So one of the things that was, you've mentioned here that it's your background, isn't it? And when you look at it, I suppose running the county is just this is an easy way of saying it, but an oversized version of running a city, right? And obviously, being a mayor, being on the council, you have a lot of experience about that. And we asked this to every candidate who's been coming on recently, but what does being Orange County Supervisor mean to you? Like, what is it? It's got lots of roles, it's got lots of different jobs, but what does it actually mean to you as an individual? What's your take on that?
Well, for someone who wants to really geek out on public policy, the county supervisor is the job to have, because you touch a little bit of everything. It's from transportation to healthcare to, you sit on all kinds of boards and commissions, your public safety, you're approving budgets. So, as someone who studied government, formally getting a master's degree in government, I also went back and got an executive certificate in public leadership from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. So, to me, it would be like a kid in a candy store. You get to kind of have your fingers in a little bit of everything. So I really enjoyed the transportation policy and working on that when I was on OCTA, and all 5 supervisors are automatically still on the OCTA board there. But just like you mentioned, the County Board of Supervisors is basically the city council for the unincorporated areas of the county, which there's still, we have 34 incorporated cities, but there are, decent chunks of the county out there that still are unincorporated. So we would be in essence, we're the city council for those areas. So, working on all these things would be a lot of fun for me.
Now, everybody has sort of like their main focus or priorities in their political limelight. What sort of hits your main points that you like to really pay more attention to?
Well, public safety has got to be, job one of local government. And so we can't lose sight of that. And I kind of feel like sometimes government might get, if you try to tackle every problem under the sun, then you don't do any of them very well.
No, you're right.
So you gotta keep your priorities straight. So we're very lucky to have a great sheriff in Don Barnes, who I just think the world of and respect enormously, and want to support him. My dear friend Todd Spitzer, who was my colleague on the OCTA board for years. Of course, I know Todd very well, doing a terrific job for us as district attorney. So these offices, we want to make sure that they're well funded and supported by our county board of supervisors. Frankly, I'll be very honest as well. I want to run for Orange County Board of Supervisors to make sure we keep ourselves Orange County and not let what's going on in LA County kind of spill over. Just as an example, where I live up in La Habra, I could very easily drive down Whittier Boulevard and go to Target to go shopping in Whittier. I would pay 10.5% sales tax at that Target.
Right.
Or I go to the Target that's found in La Habra and it's 8.75%. And that's every time you buy anything, the difference between that. It's because in LA County, they just endlessly are raising taxes. I'm a candidate, obviously. What makes me tick, I'm a limited government, low taxes, private property rights, pro-free enterprise kind of guy. So that's the message. That's my philosophy and my motivation. And I think the voters of North Orange County, who've seen me around a lot, have probably come to expect that from me. So that's the mantle I will carry.
Now, if I may ask you a question regarding taxes, because that's a big subject, right? And we've seen over the last couple of years that some cities, it's almost like, well, we've got no other option. This is what we've got to do, and so what ideas do you have in order to change what's going on right now in order to keep that tax the same, for an example?
Yeah, it's just look around. Every city's raising their sales tax. It's really unfortunate. I actually ran the opposition to the sales tax increase in my hometown of La Habra just last year. So I did my best to get the no message out, but the voters did approve it anyway. But no, we got to stop it. We got to make sure on the spending side of the equation, we're keeping our spending under control, and not letting the easy answer, of course. I mean, I got elected and took office in December of 2008. And I remember walking into the city manager's office. Oh, congratulations, Tim. Welcome aboard. We're having this thing called the Great Recession right now. We have to do mid-year budget cuts, and it's ugly. I mean, I walked into a situation that was very brutal and ugly. And, we just found a way to trim the sales and to get the spending under control. The easy answer usually is to raise taxes. Yeah. So I hope it's kind of like that should be the absolute option of last resort.
Right.
And I'm afraid that's not always the case.
Now, we often hear that sometimes it's the amount that we pay, that Orange County pays into our federal system, is we get very little back. Is that something else that like on your mind there? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, Orange County is a donor county. It has to do with how, what happened after Prop 13 and the formulas that got put in place at the time about how property tax would be allocated. So the county government lives off of property tax. And so you see how that property tax gets divided out. Lion's share, a lot of it goes to the schools, of course. What ends up happening in some places, like let's take Newport Mesa as an example, the property tax is so high because they're right on the beach that the school district there in Newport Mesa just gets funded by their local property tax. They don't get funded how most school districts get funded with the average daily attendance.
Okay.
So they are just, because their local taxpayers are paying so much. Whereas in other parts of the state, if, the local property tax might be a lot lower, the state will come in and fill the gap on the average daily attendance there. So we are sort of punished over the fact that we do have some pretty high areas with very high property tax. And the thing with the schools as well, Orange County, we're going to be having a very interesting demographic change going forward. Virtually every school district in the county has a declining enrollment. And we're seeing young people who, have kids in school-age kids, they just can't afford to live in Orange County.
Right.
So they're raising their kids elsewhere. So this has been going on for a while. The K through 12 student enrollment is declining in Orange County. And, we're kind of just getting slowly but surely an older and older population overall. So it's going to present, Orange County in the future is going to look different. We're going to have, fewer teachers because there's fewer students, and it's going to impact our workforce. And so that we got to be mindful of all that.
Do you feel there's going to be a knock-on effect with that? Because obviously if less people are bringing the kids to school that means less people are shopping in the area, less sales tax. Maybe people then start looking at jobs somewhere else. Do you feel that could really be some type of effect that we see in Orange County in time?
Absolutely. The economy, what's the old saying? Demographics is destiny. So our demographics are looking to change. We're going to have a different, you won't be selling as many, much baby formula or strollers in stores, and things that older people will, might need are going to be in higher demand. Things like, there's the effort of trying to make sure senior citizens don't end up in nursing homes, trying to keep them in their home, so that things like, the at-home service and bringing, care so people can age in their home. That's going to be a big challenge because it's very expensive to get seniors in nursing homes.
Yeah,
so
it's not cheap at all.
We don't want that at all if we can avoid that. So we have to look at things like that.
Moving a little bit forward from that, and it sort of runs into each other. One of the other challenges I'm sure you're going to face in the 4th District is, economic development, housing, things like that. What's your take on those types of topics?
Well, for my day job working for the Realtor Association, I've
deal with everything
many times, yeah, and many times a year I'm sitting in presentations by top economists talking about the housing market in California. So I think to my knowledge, it's universally agreed upon. We have a profound housing shortage across the state of California. And just like in, the market is supply and demand, and we just don't have enough supply for our demand. And so we've just seen prices go up, up, and up. And, you see just what it would cost for, a median priced home in Orange County. It's just stunning. So what ends up happening, of course, people that can't afford a home, they're moving in with their relatives, and we're kind of seeing the number of people per household is actually going up,
increasing,
because people are just smashing into the housing they have with their cousin or their grandma or whoever. So and that presents different challenges. And in neighborhood, you have more cars trying to be parked on, and a lot
That's true, more on streets, right? And I get that. Yeah.
So it's everyone in theory agrees with the idea, I think, of a more housing supply, But when it becomes, okay, well, let's build housing right here. Oh, no, not here.
Yeah. Not in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly. We get a lot of that. Same with other things, homeless shelters. Well, we need a homeless shelter. There's nowhere near me. Let's put it over there. And so that's always the challenge to try to overcome. But, it can be done well. Like where my office is over by Angel Stadium. If people ever go around there, they call it the Platinum Triangle. A lot of really, big, dense, apartment buildings and big projects. There's a lot of people living right there around Angel Stadium now. And, and I go there to work, to work. And, it kind of is a vibrant thing. There's a lot of restaurants now, and you can walk to the Angels baseball game, and it's kind of a cool thing. My wife wouldn't want to be living there with our kids,
Sure.
but for some people who maybe younger professionals, maybe they don't have kids, kind of that kind of living is attractive for some.
Do you feel that might be somewhat of the way forward a little bit? Is the American dream used to, as we sort of are led to believe it is, you finish university or college, then you get a job, then you buy a home, and so on and so forth. Do you feel that we're becoming a little bit more European, where people are thinking, well, actually, maybe it's more we're living in apartment complexes and things like that, and then maybe one day moving on to a home, which then eases that?
Yeah, again, it won't be for everyone. I know, like my wife loves having the backyard or the front yard, but where we can get higher density housing, especially around things like a train station, right? So younger professional, maybe they work in downtown LA, they can just we have that over in the Fullerton area around the Metrolink station. So when I worked for the governor in downtown LA, I took the Metrolink train. It was great. You hop on there. You don't have to worry about traffic. So you get, it's a way to get cars off the road. It's better for the environment. There's a lot to be said about that. So, it wouldn't be for everybody. But, if we can get those kinds of opportunities, it takes traffic off the road, and it gets the roof over a lot of people's head that way.
So you said something interesting a moment ago, which I totally believe is true, is that, that you have more people now living in one home dwelling, right, than you ever did before because of being forced to. You don't think by any chance America's or California is going to take out of England's thing there and start poll taxing everybody with how many people are in the home, do you?
I don't think so, but I'm glad you brought up England. I want you to talk more because I love your accent so much.
It's not about me today. But so anyway, moving on a little bit about, many residents are concerned about homelessness. It's everywhere. And you touched on it a moment ago about how, there's a lot of cities are forward thinking, how they've brought up some type of shelter or help. But then in Orange County, especially if you're looking after the 4th district, you've got a lot in your district, but then other districts are like, oh, we don't want them in our backyard.
Yeah.
How are you going to proceed with that?
Well, there is sort of a shift underway when it comes to homelessness. Back when I was still on the city council, we'd had a court ruling that came out of Boise, Idaho, where the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals basically said cities can't enforce their camping ordinances if they didn't have sufficient number of beds for their homeless population. So in essence, that Boise case made it almost impossible for cities to say, hey, you can't just be living in our park.
Right.
So they were, you saw it was everywhere. We just recently had a case that came out of Grants Pass, Oregon. The United States Supreme Court basically overturned that decision and is allowing some more enforcement. So there is now a different legal environment we can operate in local government. Another big thing, I'm hearing the governor talk suddenly very differently about homelessness. Obviously, Governor Newsom has ideas of being president of the United States, and he's realizing he's got a problem in that there's pictures of, huge homeless encampments across California. So I think he's really going to make a different drive as well. So I feel that the world is changing on us right now on how we can address homelessness. But the cities of North Orange County have done a terrific job, and I'm proud I was part of the council in La Habra at the time when we were partnering with our neighboring cities, and we have beautiful, great facilities in Buena Park and Placentia, and it was fun. I was mayor of La Habra in 2018, and Judge Carter asked all the 34 mayors in Orange County to come into his chamber. He had a court hearing. There was this case on homelessness. So me and 33 other mayors went into Judge Carter's chamber, and he kind of let us have it there. So I felt like we were being called to the principal's office, and he did actually say, North County, you guys are doing, he really gave it to the
Stood at one side of the room.
So I was like, phew, thank goodness I'm from North County. So, but things like the idea of people in one city, you pick up your homeless population and drive them off and let them off into another city. He said that is not happening anymore. That if I hear about that happening, I'm really throwing the book at you. So, I mean, sometimes you kind of need to be shaken by the shoulders a little bit, and I don't want to only be negative. There's a lot of great work that's happened in Orange County around homelessness and in throughout the county. Honestly, we got a new place coming up in Irvine, and it's like a Rubik's Cube homelessness. Okay, we solved it. Oh, but wait, we still have this problem over here. So, there is the difference between those who are chronically homeless versus the person who just lost their job, got evicted, and there's some of that person we need to get rapidly back into a home. The person who's been homeless for years, probably they're, I hate to generalize, but mental health problems, drug addiction problems, things like that. What often gets people off the street is we're connecting them with a relative, but maybe their cousin doesn't want them in their home if they're actively using drugs, or they have schizophrenia and they're not on their medication. So getting that underlying problem addressed of the mental health or drug addiction, things like that, then their relatives are more likely to go ahead and take them back in and get them under a roof. So that tends to, I think, often be the case of how we get a victory.
That was a great lead in there about mental health and things, because, our current supervisor's office, they've been very proactive with the Cal Optima Health and all those types of things. And I know you've been following all this because, you're into all that sort of stuff. What's your take on where we're going with the health side of things?
Yeah. If you had a magic wand, people who are suffering from schizophrenia or other mental health, it's not good for them to be just left alone on the streets either. I mean, you somehow have to get them into a treatment facility where they're being treated. And I know to me, that's the more compassionate approach, rather than just, we shouldn't, take them against their will. Well, I mean, they sometimes people aren't able to care for themselves. So, with Cal Optima, it's a very important program that the county board of supervisors, there's a couple of supervisors that sit on that, making sure we get that important care to those who really are in need, and addressing that problem for them.
Now, the one things that you touched on earlier, and of course, being part of the Realtor Association, obviously, a lot that's going on in business. What types of things would you be looking for to assist with the local businesses, and also especially small businesses, because they're the backbone of everything, aren't they?
Yes.
Whilst you're in the office.
Well, I would guess if I were to inject you with truth serum, how often do you, as the CEO of the chamber, get a call and say, "Hey, guess what? The government is doing something, and I love it."
They did it for the PPP money, and that was really about it, I think.
Well, that's true. But my guess is people like you get more phone calls saying, "Gosh dang it, the government is, doing this to me. They're raising.
What are you going to do about it?" Right? Yeah.
So the best thing people in government can and should be doing is trying to get out of the way as much as possible. Right. And I'm a free market guy, so that's the we got to remember that. So the county does do important things. Let's say with restaurant inspections. We have a lot of small businesses in the county that are restaurants, and it's important that the food that's being eaten there, people know is safe, and that these inspections happen. So, anything we can do to streamline the inspection, make it, good for the public, the consuming public, and the business. So anytime you're interacting with the government like that, I'm interested in making sure it's efficient, it's quick, it's, not taking a ton of time. They don't have 800,000, documents so they have to wade through. Let's make it as streamlined as possible.
Now, being on city council for a long time, you'll understand about, permitting and things like that from the cities to businesses and things like that. That's a big phone call we get all the time. Do you feel that also is something that falls under the supervisor's job to maybe help push that along, or maybe our cities or persuade cities to speed those things up or have better streamline? Or are you thinking, well, no, that's not really my umbrella area?
Well, certainly in the unincorporated areas, that would directly be the county.
Sure, right.
And my goal would be to make sure everyone knows Orange County is the best place in California to do business. So obviously, we have our state laws we can't avoid that. We can't control that. But if you're going to open a business in California, I want to make sure Orange County is the place you want to do that. We can have a very educated and skilled workforce. We have a lot to be proud of in Orange County with our terrific universities and other career technical education programs that we have. I just was touring a place where they do electricity and plumbing education. So, just even blue collar jobs to white collar jobs, Orange County needs to be the best place to do business.
Now, just out of interest, because, there's a lot going on, isn't there? There's a lot of transportation things coming up or being built right now. And, we're all concerned about funds and money, and everybody's looking for that. Do you feel there's an area in the supervisor's role there to maybe cut a few costs there? Is there a little bit of over expenditure in certain areas? Do you feel that's going to be on your radar?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll tell this story. I joined the OCTA board in 2013, and my first meeting, our city budget in La Habra at the time was, maybe the general fund was around $50 million. My first meeting at the Orange County Transportation Authority board, we were awarding this contract to widen the 405 freeway, 16 miles of freeway. And I think it was about $1.2 billion. I went, wow. Now the numbers are really, I'm like, is this a mistake? Did you put too many zeros? No, that's how much it costs.
Wow.
I mean, it's shocking how expensive it is to do something like add a lane to a freeway. And I mean, we have all these well-intentioned laws. NEPA is the national law. CEQA is the state law. We have to study the environmental impacts of things, but it creates so much paperwork, studying, delay, that by the time you have to go through all of that, and now you're just finally pouring concrete to widen a freeway. I mean, you've spent hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow.
And, California just as a whole needs to find a way to build things better and cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a story recently. People might be interested to know this. More solar panels get built in Texas than in California.
Really?
And you say that can't possibly be true. Right? All the environmentalists are in California, right?
Right.
In Texas, come on, they don't. But it's just so easy to build things in Texas.
Right. There's less control.
They're not ideologically or philosophically driven by green solar energy or what have you, but it's just so much easier to build.
Right.
It's easier to build houses, easier to put solar panels up, all that. So overall, CEQA reform has been talked about forever. Someone's going to say you're weakening environmental laws. And so that becomes it's politically very difficult to be seen as the guy who's being mean to the environment. But hopefully we can find a way, because it is shocking the amount of money that gets spent to do things that shouldn't, like widen a freeway. Everyone wants us to do it, but good grief, it's just so expensive. But having said that, transportation is a big important thing for us, and it's very important for the business community. Obviously, being able to move people and goods across the county and not just be stuck in the terrible gridlock. And we do have a lot of good, exciting things going on. Even in North County, there's a lot of work going to be happening right now on the 91 freeway. And, I was leaning all over the staff years ago to get the truck climbing lane on the 57 North up through the Brea Canyon. When the big trucks come, start up the hill, they go slow. So if we can have them move over, it allows the rest of the traffic to move. Yeah. So when we widened the Lambert and 57, when we redid that interchange, which was a great project, it was anticipated that from there up we would have a truck climbing lane. So looks like that's going to be happening. So Transportation in Orange County is we have a lot to be proud of. We had Measure M from 1990 to 2010, a 20-year 0.5% sales tax applied across the county. And then from 2010 to 2040, now we have the 30-year Measure M2 sales tax. So we're going to end up having 50 years in Orange County of a self-imposed 0.5% sales tax. And when the voters approved that, they were promised a list of projects. And, it was really fun to be on the OCTA board and living by the saying, promises made, promises kept. We promised you we would widen the 5 freeway. We promised you we would widen the 405 freeway. And here we were making good on that. So there's the checklist of promises, or, the list of promises that were made, and we're slowly but surely checking them off on promises kept. So as you go around Orange County, you'll see, right now there's the work on the 55, getting that widened, all in accordance with the promises that were made. Another thing that really helps us in, like in a city like mine in La Habra, where there is no freeways, is what we call the signal synchronization. So as you're going down, let's say we did this on Imperial Highway. So as you drive down Imperial Highway, they want to have the lights timed just so that hopefully you just keep hitting green lights. It's when you have to stop all the time at red lights. And can kind of be controlled by timing the lights. So we did it from La Habra all the way down Imperial Highway to Yorba Linda. Now that signal synchronization has happened. So on big arterial streets, that kind of run, over many cities, having that signal synchronization is a great way to have now we're not having to widen the street. You're
controlling the flow of it a lot better.
Bingo,
aren't you?
Right. You're managing the space you do have in a better way.
That's a thing they do in Europe a lot because we don't have the space to do the roads. That's funny you mentioned that, though. It's a very smart idea.
Yes.
And is that something you'd like to?
Oh, more signal synchronizations are great. That you get an improvement in your travel time, and you're not having to go through the misery of widening it, because that's, you're going to have to take property, and it's real expensive there. Another good thing to always look out for that we did a lot of here in North Orange County was separating the train tracks from the streets. They're called grade separations.
Okay.
So if you have the train track coming and it crosses a busy street, of course, when the train comes, the arms come down and it stops the traffic, and you have to wait for the train. So we found ways to either take the cars underneath or above the train, and that's what's called the grade separation. So we did 7 of them across the corridor here in North Orange County, and it works out great. It's not only better travel times for everybody, it's a safety feature as well. When
nobody getting hit by a train anymore.
When cars make the stupid mistake of trying to get around the bar, they get hit by the train. Oh no! So we avoid that. So if grade separations it's all very expensive, but if we can find other areas like that, I really like those grade separation projects.
Now, I hate to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to, because you're here and you did mention it, and it's something that I often think about personally myself. But you were talking about how environmentalists might not like to hear, but a lot of our equipment's made out in other states because it's easier. Now, to be fair, being in the manufacturing world myself back in the day, it goes a little bit further than that. Some of the well, for here would be state rulings or what have you. They've made certain things in particular way where we wouldn't be able to build them here because we're overstepping on some slight gas being admitted into the air or something else. Do you feel that in order to long term now, not right now, like in years to come, when you're handing this over to somebody else, that there is some cause for us to maybe look at what we're doing, and have we overstepped on these things so we can bring these types of manufacturing back into Orange County?
I would love to see manufacturing come back to Orange County, and I want to be very clear. I was born in 1977, so I remember growing up in the 80s when they wouldn't let us go outside to play soccer because we had stage 1 smogglers.
All right. Okay.
And it was terrible. The feeling of that burning in the lung when you're breathing, really yucky air. And as a kid, it was, I definitely want to protect the environment. I don't want us to go back to the days of stage 1 smogglers and that kind of stuff. You just got to find a way to make it reasonable. Of course we want to protect the environment, but so many times I'm afraid we're getting minuscule environmental benefit at the cost of shutting down and killing off all these jobs. We got to strike a balance. One of the big fights right now I'm fighting at work, actually, our friends on the Air Quality Management District Board, they were looking at flat out banning natural gas appliances. And now that they were getting so much pushback, I think now they've settled in on just charging a fee, but for your, stove and other appliances in your home. And thankfully we have Supervisor Don Wagner on the AQMD board who is fighting the good fight. It's going to be close. They may, that board may be imposing some outrageous, costs and fee on natural. They're trying to force everyone into electrification.
Right.
Yeah.
But then when we have a grid failure,
right,
we're not cooking.
That's right.
We starve.
Right.
And sweat to death.
Well, yeah, exactly. And as from my employer's perspective, so many homes, we have all these natural gas appliances.
Right.
If you don't let the homes have it, of course, you're making home ownership just that much more expensive.
Right.
If suddenly there's all these fees attached to the appliances.
As a homeowner, gas appliances, it weighs up sometimes. It's less expensive to have than an electrical appliance, and that's why people do it.
Well, you should see on this board, we have Los Angeles County Supervisors who are saying, we need to ban. I sat there and listened to it. They're flat out wanting to ban the natural gas appliances, and if that we're not going to do that, to have an extremely high fee to really discourage the use of natural gas. And and again, I'm just sitting in the audience like, good grief, can we find some middle ground?
Middle ground here, right. Wow, that's tough. That's tough. So how do you personally deal with all that sort of stuff? Because this is a big deal, and luckily you've had some serious experience in this type of world. So when you sat there and you're dealing with that, and yet sometimes you're going to be the odd one out because you're really sticking up for the people who you serve. Yeah. How does that go about?
Well, at a lot of these meetings, what ends up happening, who's in the room? It's the activists, right? Okay. So you might have 100 activists in there yelling at you. The normal person who's just going about their life is not in the room. And it's very difficult sometimes when you're sitting up at the dais you got to remember, what is the normal person at home who I represent? How is this impacting them?
Right.
Are they going to really be in favor of adding hundreds of dollars, to the cost of their appliances? I bet the answer is no.
No, right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I've always tried to keep myself grounded. Thankfully for me, I have Shannon Shaw in my life. So a absolutely normal person who could care less about politics. And so when I say, hey, what do you think about this? She's sort of my sounding board on what does a normal person think?
Right. That makes sense. That's funny. Yeah. So, moving on a little bit about, recently we've had everywhere. It's all over the media. I don't need to name names, but there's lack of transparency or a bit of stuff going on here, left, right, and center. One of the things I think a lot of people are looking at is how are our officials moving forward going to be maybe more transparent. What's your take on all that?
Well, thank goodness for the internet, right? Honestly, so what's the old saying? The best disinfectant is sunshine, right? To me, and even in the scandal we had here in the county, it was an investigative reporter who was digging through, agenda reports and following the money. And, sometimes it's only that one guy who kind of puts the sunshine on an issue. So making good use of the internet, putting everything out there online as much as we can, and we hopefully have a good group of journalists out there and bloggers. There's just citizen journalists out there, keeping an eye on our politicians and how they're spending taxpayer money. You can't pass a law saying, "Hey, I order you to be ethical in your life," but of course, but hopefully we're all remembering why we ran for office and why we're holding office. It's not to just enrich your relatives and yourself. I mean, you got to approach it as public service, and I believe I would do that.
Now, just that was a great lead in that without you even knowing it. So if people want to actually learn more about you, I believe your website is at shaw4oc.com. Is that right?
Yes, it's not live yet. We're working on it very soon. Shaw, the number 4oc.com. My personal cell phone number is 562-277-8056. Happy to get a text or a phone call from anyone if they have a question for me. So I think I'm a fairly open book, easy. Hopefully I'm easy to reach and happy to talk with anyone.
And obviously, it's fine to talk about it today, just before we sort of close out the meeting. Oh, sorry, the little guest talk today. How is your campaign doing? What are you seeing? What are people saying? What are you finding out?
I think the campaign's going great. For me, there's 7 cities in the 4th district. I've been on the ballot in all 7 of them. My dear friends who are in the mix as well, they're on the city council, which is great, but there's 6 cities that have never seen these guys. So, I think for me, I've been out there a lot, having run 4 elections in the last 8 years. I think for me, I'm kind of a known commodity. And so I expect by the end of this, I'll probably be the candidate supported by the business community and the taxpayer groups. And, given my record, that's what it's not official yet, but I expect that's how it'll play out. And it looks like I'm going to be kind of a candidate that would have a lot of support that way.
So, Tim, it's been a pleasure having you on today, and we've reached that part of today's episode where we always offer our guests that free mic time. It could be because we didn't touch on something, or there was something you'd like to, add to, or maybe it's just, some kind words or thoughts to somebody. So I wanted to offer you that time to share whatever you'd like to share.
Oh, well, thank you. I think I forgot to mention in my introduction, which is going to be very important. My wife and I have 6 boys, so we never could get a girl, darn it, but we ended up with 6 sons. So when people are at home and they're getting that mail piece from my campaign, I wanted to clear the record. Those are not actors in the mail piece. Those are actually my 6 kids. So my wife and I are about to celebrate our 20-year wedding anniversary.
Congratulations!
And I'm married to the famous Bryant family. Shannon Bryant was her maiden name. There's 8 kids in her family. All 8 of them went to Sonora High School. So this was kind of fun. The oldest was a freshman in 1990. And then the youngest one was a senior in 2010. So for 20 years, they had at least one of their kids, usually more than one, but at least one kid at Sonora High School. So I'm married into that family. So I'm related to half the district, actually. No, but it's been a lot of fun with Shannon. I'm very proud of her. She graduated from Fullerton Community College, Cal State Fullerton, her master's degree at Cal State Long Beach, back to Cal State Fullerton for her teaching credential. She's a special ed teacher in La Habra at one of our elementary schools. And so forget me, with me, you get Shannon Shaw is the significant other, and that's a very normal, honest person that I'm relying on. So, I'm looking forward to earning everybody's support and vote. I've been excited to be in public office. I haven't taken it for granted. It's been quite a joy. One of the things I'm so passionate about being on the Board of Education is the idea of school choice. And we're able to provide charter schools as a member of the County Board of Education. One of the challenges our charter schools have been having is getting facilities. and they just can't, get that campus open. And if I get onto the County Board of Supervisors and have, zoning and land use decision making, at least in the unincorporated areas, I'm really excited to help support our great charter schools out there, and maybe hopefully getting a facility as well. So that's kind of my current position, but it can be furthered with the work at the County Board of Supervisors as well.
Well, thank you again very much for coming on, and we wish you all the very best of luck.
Oh, Andrew, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Chamber Talk. Until next time, stay inspired and connected by visiting nocchamber.com and selecting Sign Up for News at the homepage. For more interviews, visit chambertalk.podbean.com.